Over the past few years, the housing market felt like a runaway train that nobody could stop. Prices climbed higher and higher, seemingly immune to gravity. Sellers held all the cards, dictating terms while desperate buyers scrambled with offers tens of thousands over asking, waived inspections, and love letters pleading for a chance. It felt endless, like the boom would never break. But 2026 has rewritten that story completely. The leverage sellers enjoyed for so long is crumbling before their eyes. Markets that once attracted frenzied bidding wars are now flooded with homes that sit unsold for months. For the first time in over a decade, prices aren't just leveling off, they're falling hard. Builders overestimated demand. Investors who bought at peak prices are now trapped, and the buyers they counted on have either walked away or are waiting patiently for even steeper discounts. In major metros across the country, home values are sinking by percentages that would have seemed impossible just 2 years ago. Price cuts, seller concessions, and desperate incentives are suddenly standard practice. Sellers are panicking, buyers are waiting, and the entire power structure of American real estate is flipping on its head. If you're curious about where the housing market is headed and which cities are leading this collapse, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because what's happening in 2026 could reshape homeownership in America for a generation. Let's dive in. Number 12, Denver, Colorado. Denver's housing story was supposed to be bulletproof. The city had everything going for it: spectacular mountain views, a booming tech scene, outdoor lifestyle appeal, and a steady stream of educated transplants fleeing higher-cost states. From 2019 through early 2024, home prices in the mile-high city surged relentlessly. Modest suburban homes that once sold for $400,000 were suddenly fetching $650,000 or more. Sellers barely had to lift a finger. Bidding wars were the norm, not the exception. But by 2026, that fairy tale has turned into a nightmare. Home prices across the metro area have dropped roughly 11% from their peak, and the slide shows no sign of stopping. Neighborhoods like Capitol Hill, Park Hill, and even once hot suburbs like Littleton and Aurora are seeing inventory pile up like never before. Homes that used to disappear within hours now sit on the market for 90 days or longer, collecting price cuts along the way. The problem is multifaceted. First, mortgage rates remain stubbornly elevated, locking out first-time buyers who powered much of Denver's earlier growth. Second, the tech sector that drew so many people here has cooled significantly. Layoffs and hiring freezes mean fewer relocations and less urgency to buy. Third, and perhaps most damaging, developers went all in during the boom years, constructing thousands of new homes and condos that the market simply cannot absorb. Now sellers are stuck competing not just with each other, but with brand new construction offering builder incentives that resale homes can't match. Drive through neighborhoods like Stapleton or Green Valley Ranch, and you'll see a landscape dotted with for sale signs that have been standing for months. Open houses that used to draw crowds now see maybe 2 or 3 visitors, if any. Sellers who were confident they'd cash out big are instead slashing prices every few weeks, hoping to attract anyone willing to make an offer. Some are offering to pay closing costs, buy down interest rates, or throw in appliances, anything to move the property. But even with these concessions, many homes just sit. The emotional toll is real. Families who planned their next chapter around a big sale are now trapped, unable to move forward because they can't unload their current home without taking a significant loss. Investors who bought rental properties assuming endless appreciation are bleeding cash every month, caught between high mortgage payments and tenants who can't afford rent increases. Denver was sold as a sure thing, a market where demand would always outpace supply. But in 2026, it's become a cautionary tale about what happens when optimism runs too far ahead of economic reality. The mountains still look stunning, the lifestyle still appeals, but none of that matters when the numbers don't work. For sellers in Denver, the dream of cashing in has turned into a slow, grinding wait. Number 11, Tampa, Florida. Tampa spent years riding a wave of hype that seemed unstoppable. Retirees, remote workers, and investors all flocked to Florida's Gulf Coast, drawn by no state income tax, year-round sunshine, and what seemed like endless growth potential. From 2020 to 2023, Tampa's housing market went absolutely wild. Prices doubled in some neighborhoods. Sellers routinely received multiple offers within days. The phrase "sold over asking" became a mantra. But 2026 has brought a harsh correction. Home prices have fallen approximately 13% across the metro, with some submarkets down even more. Inventory has exploded, and the once unshakable confidence among sellers has evaporated. The reasons are stacking up fast. Insurance costs in Florida have become borderline catastrophic. Homeowners are facing annual premiums that rival mortgage payments, and in some cases, they can't get coverage at all. That's scaring off buyers in droves. Add to that the reality of climate risk. Increasingly severe hurricane seasons have made people think twice about planting roots in a flood zone. Then there's the oversupply issue. Developers built with reckless abandon during the boom, assuming demand would stay red hot forever. Now there are entire new subdivisions in places like Wesley Chapel, Riverview, and New Tampa sitting partially unsold. Builders are slashing prices and offering massive incentives, undercutting the resale market completely. If you're a regular seller trying to compete with a builder offering $50,000 in closing cost credits and rate buydowns, you're essentially out of luck. The emotional whiplash is profound. Sellers who thought they'd retire comfortably on their home equity are now watching that wealth evaporate. Some are holding firm, refusing to accept the new reality, letting their homes languish on the market with no offers. Others are panic selling, taking whatever they can get just to escape before things get worse. Meanwhile, the rental market is also softening. Investors who scooped up properties expecting to Airbnb them to tourists are finding that the vacation rental boom has cooled. Occupancy rates are down, regulations are tightening, and carrying costs are up. Many are trying to offload properties, flooding the market even further. Tampa's story is particularly painful because so many people bought into the narrative that Florida was the future, a state where growth was guaranteed and real estate was a no-brainer investment. But in 2026, Tampa is proving that no market is immune to fundamentals. When insurance is unaffordable, climate risks are rising, and supply vastly exceeds demand, even sunshine and low taxes can't save you. Number 10. Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville earned its nickname as Music City, but for a few years, it might as well have been called Boom City. The influx of people from expensive coastal markets transformed Nashville into one of the hottest real estate markets in the country. Californians and New Yorkers arrived with cash, driving prices up so fast that locals were priced out of neighborhoods they'd lived in for generations. Developers raced to keep up, building luxury condos, sprawling subdivisions, and mixed-use developments at a breakneck pace. For a while, it seemed like Nashville could do no wrong. But 2026 has brought the music to a screeching halt. Home prices have dropped about 10% from their peak, and the market has shifted dramatically in favor of buyers. Sellers who expected quick sales and top-dollar offers are instead facing extended days on market, lowball offers, and the humbling reality that their home isn't worth what they thought. The fundamental problem is that Nashville's growth story was built on migration, and that migration has slowed to a trickle. With remote work policies tightening and companies calling employees back to offices, the wave of out-of-state buyers has dried up. The people who remain are locals, and locals never had the income levels to support the inflated prices that transplants were paying. Now there's a massive gap between what sellers want and what buyers can actually afford. Neighborhoods like the Gulch, East Nashville, and Germantown that were once impossible to break into are now seeing price reductions every week. Luxury homes that listed for $1.2 million are now sitting at $950,000 with no takers. Builders who constructed entire communities on the outskirts of the city are stuck with unsold inventory and mounting debt. Some are offering buyers everything, including paying off student loans, gifting cars, or covering a year of HOA fees just to close a deal. For everyday sellers, the situation is even tougher. They don't have the deep pockets that builders do, so they can't offer wild incentives. They're just stuck, watching their homes sit while comparable properties keep dropping in price around them. The psychological shift is striking. Just a couple of years ago, selling a home in Nashville felt like winning the lottery. Now it feels like a gamble that might not pay off. Nashville's downtown still buzzes with tourists and Broadway honky-tonks, And the city still has plenty of charm. But the real estate market has lost its momentum, and sellers are learning a hard lesson that hype and headlines don't pay the mortgage. Number 9. Raleigh, North Carolina. Raleigh was the golden child of the Sun Belt, a city that seemed to have cracked the code. Strong job growth, a thriving research triangle, excellent schools, and reasonable costs made it a magnet for young families and professionals. Real estate agents called it the perfect market, and for a while, they were right. Homes sold fast, prices climbed steadily, and everyone felt like a winner. But in 2026, that perfection has cracked wide open. Home prices are down approximately 12%, and inventory is rising faster than almost anywhere else in the region. Sellers who thought they'd ride the Raleigh wave to easy profits are instead stuck in a market that no longer wants what they're selling. The issue is twofold: overbuilding and stagnation. Developers flooded Raleigh and its suburbs with new construction, assuming demand would keep pace. It didn't. At the same time, job growth has slowed. The corporate relocations that powered Raleigh's boom have tapered off, and without that constant influx of new residents, the housing market has nowhere to go but down. Suburban areas like Cary, Apex, and Wake Forest are particularly hard hit. Streets that were once filled with moving trucks are now lined with for sale signs. Sellers are cutting prices, offering credits, and bending over backward to attract buyers, but it's not working. Buyers have options now, and they're using that leverage to negotiate hard or simply wait for even better deals. New construction is undercutting resales at every turn, and many sellers feel helpless watching builders offer incentives they simply can't match. There's also a psychological element at play. Raleigh's reputation as a smart, stable market made people feel safe buying at elevated prices. Now those same buyers are realizing they overpaid, and they're not eager to repeat the mistake. Word has spread that the market is softening, and in real estate, perception becomes reality fast. Once buyers sense desperation, they pull back, waiting for the bottom. And sellers, no matter how patient they try to be, eventually panic. Raleigh is still a great city with strong fundamentals, but in 2026, that's not enough. The market got ahead of itself, and now it's paying the price. Sellers are learning that even in a so-called safe market, timing is everything, and right now, the timing couldn't be worse. Number 8. Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte built its identity on being the South's financial hub, a gleaming skyline filled with banks and Fortune 500 companies. For years, that corporate backbone made Charlotte feel like a sure bet for real estate. People moved there for stable jobs, affordable housing, and a quality of life that bigger cities couldn't offer. Prices rose steadily, and the market hummed along with quiet confidence. But 2026 has shattered that confidence. Home prices have fallen about 11%, and the drop is accelerating. What was once a seller's dream has become a grinding nightmare of price cuts, failed negotiations, and homes that won't sell no matter what. The catalyst for Charlotte's decline is corporate uncertainty. Banking and finance, the industries that built this city, are contracting. Mergers, layoffs, and cost-cutting have left thousands of professionals either out of work or too nervous to make a major purchase. The pipeline of relocating employees has slowed dramatically, and without that steady demand, Charlotte's housing market has lost its foundation. Suburbs like Ballantyne, Huntersville, and Matthews are seeing the worst of it. These areas were built specifically for corporate transplants, families who wanted new construction, good schools, and easy commutes. Now those same homes are sitting unsold for months. Builders are panic discounting, and resale sellers are caught in the crossfire, unable to compete. Some sellers have dropped their asking prices by $50,000 or more and still can't get an offer. The emotional toll is severe. Charlotte attracted people with the promise of stability, and now that promise feels broken. Sellers who plan to move up or relocate for new jobs are stuck, unable to sell without taking a significant loss. Some are converting their homes into rentals just to avoid foreclosure, but that's flooding the rental market too, driving down rents and making the overall situation even messier. Charlotte's skyline still looks impressive, especially at night when the lights reflect off all that glass and steel. But below the surface, the market is unraveling. Sellers are desperate, buyers are waiting, and the city that prided itself on stability is now facing a reckoning it didn't see coming. Number 7. Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City was the pandemic darling that nobody saw coming. Suddenly, this mountain town was on everyone's radar. Californians fleeing high taxes, remote workers seeking outdoor adventure, and investors chasing the next hot market all descended on Utah's capital. Home prices skyrocketed, inventory vanished, and sellers enjoyed one of the wildest runs in recent real estate history. But by 2026, the party is over. Home prices have plunged roughly 14%, one of the steepest declines in the Mountain West. The market that once moved at lightning speed has ground to a near halt, and sellers are staring at a reality they never imagined. The primary culprit is simple. The migration stopped. Remote work policies tightened, and the flood of out-of-state buyers that drove Salt Lake's boom simply evaporated. Without that external demand, the market collapsed back onto local incomes, and locals never had the earnings to support the prices that Californians were paying. Now, there's a massive disconnect, and it's sellers who are absorbing the pain. Neighborhoods in Draper, Sandy, and South Jordan that were red hot just 2 years ago are now littered with price cuts and expired listings. Sellers are offering to cover closing costs, include furniture, pay for repairs, anything to generate interest. But even with concessions, many homes just sit. Buyers have figured out they have the leverage, and they're using it. Lowball offers are common, and sellers who reject them often end up regretting it weeks later when they have to cut the price again anyway. New construction has made things worse. Builders kept going full speed even as demand cooled, and now there are entire developments sitting partially sold. These builders have deep pockets and are willing to sell at cost just to move inventory, which makes life impossible for individual sellers trying to compete. The psychological impact is brutal. Salt Lake City sold itself as the next big thing, a market where you couldn't lose. People bought in expecting rapid appreciation, and instead they're watching their equity evaporate. Some are walking away from deposits on new builds. Others are trying to rent out homes they can't sell, but the rental market is softening too. Salt Lake City is still beautiful, the mountains still stunning, the lifestyle still appealing. But in 2026, none of that is enough to save sellers from a market that simply has too much supply and not enough demand. Number 6. San Diego, California. San Diego has always been expensive, but for decades, buyers accepted that because the city offered something special: perfect weather, ocean access, and a lifestyle that felt like a permanent vacation. Real estate there was considered a safe, long-term investment, insulated by desirability and limited land. But 2026 has shaken that assumption to its core. Home prices have dropped approximately 10%, and in some coastal neighborhoods, the declines are closer to 15%. For the first time in memory, San Diego sellers are scared. The problem is affordability finally hit a breaking point. Mortgage rates remain elevated, and even with price drops, monthly payments are still out of reach for most buyers. The people who could afford San Diego are either already there or have decided it's not worth the financial strain. Meanwhile, the wealthy buyers who used to scoop up luxury properties are pulling back, spooked by economic uncertainty and better opportunities elsewhere. Inventory has surged, particularly in areas like La Jolla, Del Mar, and Carlsbad. Homes that would have sold in days are now sitting for months. Sellers are slashing prices, offering credits, and bending on terms. But buyers aren't biting. They've seen prices fall and they're betting they'll fall further. It's a waiting game and sellers are losing. What makes San Diego's situation particularly painful is that many sellers bought at or near the peak, thinking they were making a safe investment in a market that never crashes. Now they're facing the reality that they might have to sell for less than they paid, which in a place like San Diego feels almost unthinkable. The emotional weight is enormous. There's also a generational divide playing out. Older homeowners who bought decades ago still have plenty of equity and can afford to wait. But younger sellers who stretched to buy in recent years are trapped, unable to sell without a loss, and unable to afford the payments much longer. Some are quietly slipping into pre-foreclosure, hoping for a miracle that isn't coming. San Diego still looks like paradise, the beaches still sparkle, the sunsets still take your breath away. But in 2026, even paradise has a price limit. And sellers are discovering that when affordability disappears, so does demand. Number 5. Portland, Oregon. Portland's quirky charm and natural beauty made it a beloved city for decades, but its housing market in 2026 is anything but charming. Home prices have fallen roughly 13%, and the decline is accelerating. What was once a competitive market with tight inventory has turned into a buyer's playground where sellers are practically begging for offers. The reasons behind Portland's collapse are complex. The city's reputation has taken a beating in recent years. Number 4. Sacramento, California. Sacramento was supposed to be the escape valve for California's housing crisis. While San Francisco and Los Angeles became unaffordable for average families, Sacramento offered a middle ground, California living without the insane price tag. For years, that narrative worked. People fled the Bay Area, cashed out their equity, and bought bigger homes in Sacramento. Prices surged, and the market felt unstoppable. But 2026 has flipped the script entirely. Home prices in Sacramento have dropped about 12%, and sellers are facing a market that has completely lost its momentum. Inventory. Resale sellers can't compete with builder concessions, and many are simply giving up, pulling their homes off the market and hoping things improve. The emotional and financial toll is crushing. Families who thought they'd made a smart move by relocating to Sacramento are now underwater on their mortgages, unable to sell without taking a massive loss. Some are trying to rent out their homes, but rental demand is soft too, and landlords are struggling to cover their costs. Sacramento's identity crisis is real. It's not quite the Bay Area, not quite affordable, and not quite clear what its future holds. In 2026, sellers are paying the price for a boom that was built on migration that didn't last. Number 3. Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas has always been a city of extremes, and its housing market in 2026 is no exception. Home prices have fallen approximately 15%, one of the steepest drops in the entire country. Sellers who thought they'd cash in on Vegas's pandemic boom are now trapped in a market that has turned brutally hostile. The problem is oversupply on a staggering scale. Developers built entire master-planned communities on the outskirts of the valley, assuming demand would keep pace. It didn't. Now there are thousands of homes sitting unsold in places like Summerlin, Henderson, and North Las Vegas. Builders are slashing prices, offering free upgrades, covering closing costs, doing whatever it takes to move inventory. Resale sellers are left with no options, unable to compete, and unable to wait, because carrying costs are bleeding them dry. Las Vegas's economy, heavily dependent on tourism and service jobs, hasn't fully recovered either. Number 2. Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix was the crown jewel of the Sunbelt housing boom, a city that seemed destined for endless growth. Cheap land, warm weather, and a steady stream of retirees and remote workers made it a developer's dream. From 2020 to 2023, home prices in Phoenix soared faster than almost anywhere else in the country. Builders couldn't keep up with demand, and sellers enjoyed one of the easiest markets in modern history. But 2026 has delivered a devastating correction. Home prices have plummeted roughly 16%, and the freefall shows no sign of slowing. Sellers are in full panic mode, slashing prices, offering desperate concessions, and still watching their homes sit unsold. The core issue is that Phoenix was built on speculation, not fundamentals. Number 1. Austin, Texas. At the very top of the list, the city experiencing the most dramatic collapse in home prices sits Austin, Texas. Once hailed as the next great American boomtown, Austin's housing market has imploded. Home prices have crashed approximately 18% from their peak, the steepest decline of any major metro in the country. Sellers are in absolute desperation mode, and the market carnage is unlike anything the city has ever seen. Austin's rise was meteoric. Tech companies fled California, bringing high-paid workers and venture capital. The city became synonymous with innovation, growth, and limitless potential. Home prices doubled, then doubled again. Sellers had their pick of buyers, and bidding wars were standard. It felt like Austin had cracked the code, like it would be the next Silicon Valley. But that dream has shattered completely. The tech industry that built Austin has collapsed. Layoffs at Tesla, Oracle, and countless startups have gutted the high-income buyer pool that sustained the market. The Silicon Hills nickname now feels like a cruel joke. Without those tech salaries, there's simply no one left to pay Austin's inflated home prices, and the supply problem is catastrophic. Developers built with reckless abandon, adding thousands of homes and condos that the market cannot absorb. And that's the landscape of American real estate in 2026. 12 cities, 12 cautionary tales, and one undeniable truth. The housing market is no longer a guaranteed path to wealth. For over a decade, sellers held all the power. They set the terms, named their price, and watched buyers fight over the scraps. But that era is over. The pendulum has swung, and it's swung hard. Buyers now hold the leverage, and they're using it. Across the country, sellers are learning painful lessons about overconfidence, speculation, and the dangers of believing a boom will last forever. Developers built too much, investors bought too high, and everyday homeowners got caught in the middle, holding properties that are worth far less than they paid. Some will recover, others won't. But the shift happening right now is more than just a market correction. It's a fundamental rethinking of what homeownership means, what it costs, and whether it's even worth it anymore. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective on where real estate is headed, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on, because the story is far from over. Share this with anyone who needs to see what's really happening out there. The numbers don't lie, and in 2026, they're telling a story that every seller, buyer, and investor needs to hear. The market has spoken, and it's saying the boom is over.